Super excited to have you here, man. I think what we're seeing is that the go-to-market playbooks for B2B SaaS marketers and just founders is like totally changing. And what I'm really excited to talk to you about today was like, you've been on both sides of marketing and sales, and you've also been a founder. You were 4 years at Loop where you were head of growth. I think you were like the fifth employee, and you went from $40,000 in ARR to I think 1 million before you hired on the first sales team. And now Loop is, I think, 250 plus, maybe 200. And then you left Loop at like the peak when we had product market fit. And then you went and founded Status, and you created a whole new category with signed in shopping and e-commerce for 3.5 years, 250 customers, 10 million accounts. And again, you found product market fit, which it's very rare for someone to have work at a company that has product market fit back to back, even alone just one time in their career. And then you come back to Loop, where there's like this little bit of like innovator's dilemma, right? Like Loop was at the top of post-purchase and the market caught up, and now you're back kind of recreating, not necessarily recreating maybe, but more like retweaking the positioning, what it means to be in post-purchase with Loop. And so much there. And so I'd love to maybe like step back and just start at the humble beginnings of your time at Loop when you were head of growth, because there was no playbook. I'm sure you had to close deals. You had to come up with all of your sales enablement on the fly. And so what I've seen with the challenge of product marketing and sales is like product marketing is reactive. You know, they're always kind of these task order takers, and it's hard to show the value. And so what is your take on the value of product marketing today in this new era of the software companies that are building their go-to-market playbooks? Where does product marketing sit for you?
Yeah, so I mean, product marketing, thanks for the great intro, by the way. Very kind. Product marketing often gets tied up into this like confusing state of who exactly are they working with inside the organization? What are they trying to accomplish? Aren't we already doing this through product and through marketing? And what I've found to be a sure thing with particularly early stage startups, maybe a founder, small founding team, team of 8, team of 10, that the best product marketer in the room is often the founder. And so what the founder is doing, or what the early leaders at a company are doing, is they're rapidly tweaking their narrative and they're rapidly tweaking their pitch. And they're doing it for investors because the first pitch failed. They got to close the round. So then they tweak the deck. And then now they'll see if they get closer to a round and they still fail. So then they tweak the deck again. And what they're usually trying to do is one of two things. They're trying to make the market bigger and the problem that they're solving bigger, right? And so like, we are serving e-commerce, and e-commerce has this big challenge, and look how massive this is becoming, right? So like the first thing a founder will do is try to tweak the market and the problem that they're serving. And then the second thing a founder will do is they'll often tweak then the product and all of the ways we're going to go attack this problem. And well, what if we attack it, so let's pick on like pre-purchase shopping apps. We used to just be rewards, but now we're also reviews, and now we're also email, and we're also SMS, right? Because what you're trying to do is create even more surface area for your product to go attack that market. And that's what founders are like, oh yeah, I do that every single day. And it's like, okay, well that at scale is product marketing, because then now but then shrink it down. It's not the company as a whole now, it's like a single feature or like a single setting tweak that we're releasing. And why did we create it to solve this problem? And how does it change how this product is going to influence this problem, right? So product marketing just does it at scale. And where a founder does it for a pitch deck and for investors, a product marketer does it for every single thing that you release. And so it's the sexy stuff, it's the big picture stuff, but it's also the unsexy stuff that just has to get out the door. Yeah. So that's the way I think about product marketing, is you're really creating a story that represents a problem in the market, and then creating a story for your product and how it solves it.
Yeah. That's good. And that's what I've talked about before, several other episodes, is like the best way to test if your product is going to resonate is just sharing it online through founder-led marketing, because they're always tweaking, and because they built the product, they're going to have the most nuance insight into the market and the customer, because they should be constantly talking to customers and selling the product, or selling VCs on what their feedback is. And so if you're not in sales, which are on the front lines talking to customers and tweaking how they're saying things, why is there this reactive story narrative in B2B SaaS? Why are marketers or product marketers have this reactive approach to tweaking the messaging, tweaking the narrative, tweaking the product, and then evangelizing that to the mass?
Yeah, this is a big, I'll say, unsolved challenge, just an evergreen challenge with the product marketer, and honestly, any growing product company. And the problem is that your sales team and your success team and your support team and your onboarding team, they have significantly more touches with the market than you do. And they always will. Like, you will never actually be able to touch the market more than your go-to-market teams will. Sales folks have 10, 15, 20 demos this week. An onboarding person has 5, 10, 15 onboarding calls this week. A support agent has 100 tickets. And so if you're coming to this saying, I need to touch the market more than anyone else, you're going to fail. And so the problem there is not to try to touch the market more than anyone else. The solution that I would recommend is try to activate and mobilize your go-to-market teams. And so what do I mean by that? Let's use an example of product feedback, right? And like, we released this feature, we thought it was going to accomplish X, turns out it accomplishes Y, and we only learned that after a sales call. Instead of the market telling a sales rep, well, hey, I wish it did X. And then the sales rep saying, hey, product team or product marketing team, they said it should do X. It's training that salesperson to say, why? And not to be rude or childish, to be like, why? But just like, hey, help me understand the root of this problem. And if you can get 2 or 3 sales reps or 3 or 4, combined with merchant success people really asking why, what you're going to get back now is 4 times the amount of quality market feedback. So that's the way I first think about it, is like really mobilizing your teams so that you're not saying, well, I need to be touching the market more. It's like, you are touching the market and I just need to be able to trust you. And if only I could trust you, we will grow 10 times faster than we could have alone, or if I was out there talking to the market. So that's like maybe the first step. But the second step is a ton of gong calls. Like, you have to be listening yourself. You said a word earlier that perfectly encapsulates product marketing: nuance. Like, it totally is. It's just the subtle shift of like, something being shiny or something being bright, like using a non-business example, but 2 words mean the same thing. There's just some nuance about what they define. And so you're looking for that nuance and you have to hear it yourself. So mobilize your go-to-market team so they give you good feedback in quantity, but then you have to go listen to gong calls to find those little subtle examples for quality, very nuanced messaging decisions.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good. So the first one, talking about like the asking the question why, I would imagine like you had to deal with that when you were head of growth at Loop, and you had really no one to turn to in marketing to be like, hey, they say this, like, let's go build this, or let's sell this feature, or I need enablement. Like, so how did you come to the realization that you needed to necessarily fight back, but like to push in and lean into understanding why they're asking, hey, I need this or I need that? Like, was there a moment, or like, did you just pick it up somehow organically?
I mean, so my family would tell you I'm great at creating excuses. I could come up with the best excuses, like why I didn't do the chores, why I didn't do this, why I didn't do that. There's a lot of logic behind this. And if only you looked at it from my point of view, you might actually agree with me. Say what you will about that skill. I'm a little embarrassed by it. But in this example, it usually comes up when the market is asking you for something that you don't have. And so there's the root problem. You are asking me for something that I don't have. I am not an engineer, so I can't build it for you. So now, if I want to win this conversation before we hang up, I need to find a different way for you to still want what I'm offering you. And this is where sales and marketing really start to overlap, but it's just a common objection. Hey, I want, and you know what, let me actually draw on an experience with status, because this is like the perfect example. So the market wants something that I don't have. How do I overcome it in this sort of like asking why framework? At Status, we were a customer accounts app. We would get shoppers signed in on behalf of merchants and then do a whole bunch of cool stuff after that. But the root functionality was getting someone signed in. And so I'd talk to hundreds of merchants and they always say, ooh, can you do sign in with SMS? It's the coolest feature I've ever seen. They just send a text straight to your phone, bop, bop, 2 taps, you're automatically logged in. It's the best. Can you do sign in with SMS? And we couldn't. So I would say, oh, I love that. I've used that too. Like, it's so amazing. Why do you want that? Well, because it's just the best sign-in method. It's like, no, I completely agree with you. It is certainly the best sign-in method, but why do you want the best sign-in method? Oh, well, I actually want to get more customers signed in. Bing. Okay, amazing. I'm so glad you said that, because that's what we care about most. And while you think getting people signed in with SMS will increase logins, it actually doesn't. We could do passwords, we could do Gmail, we could do, whatever you want. What actually gets people signed in is where you get them signed in. For example, starting a return or tracking an order. And they're like, ooh, okay. So the point being is, like, when you get to why, you figure out what they actually want. So many people in the market, so many, market agents, whatever you want to call them, when they come to you to give you feedback, they've already put the work into, like, I have a problem. I tried to solve it. I can't, but here's the solution I came up with. So you're often getting a solution that someone came up with, and asking why will just get you to the problem they're trying to solve. And then usually at that point you can say, well, hey, and here's my tip. Write it down. I've written this. I've used this for the last 7 years. While I can't do X, I can do Y. And with doing Y, you will unlock Z. And Z is the thing that they wanted. So while I can't do what you've asked for, I can do this and it accomplishes the same outcome. How does that make you feel? And often they say, oh, that's great. So just little wordplay tricks like that. Like that's the game of a product marketer. It's like little wordplay tricks.
Yeah. Ooh, that's good. From your perspective, do you feel like that is a skill that a lot of product marketers or just marketers in general, like the ability to solution sell versus like, here's my script, I'm just going to go off of my script, right? Like for you to come in and have that mindset, like I don't think is necessarily just like sales 101. Like you have to pick that up. Because if you're removing yourself, you don't have as much touches, right? As a salesperson, for you to come in to build that, I would feel like you need a lot of reps. So like from your perspective, how would somebody go build that skill set to ask questions why, and then to know I guess maybe the product as well as you're saying, right? Because you're solutioning on the fly, if that's a word, solutioning.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, so there are different answers for organizations of different sizes, right? But I guess if I was going to pick like the bare minimum organization where you have one person in every seat, right? So you have like one salesperson, one marketer, one onboarding person, one support, one engineer, one product, whatever. Like in that world, you don't want to be the person that has to go train and actually like do the legwork to say like, well, here's exactly what you say sales. Here's exactly what you say onboarding. Here's exactly what you say support. And while you could get away with it in like an 8-person organization, you will fail miserably at an 80-person organization because now you have, however many more touch points to go deliver this message. So I bring all this up again to like paint the picture of the problem. It's like you are one person. You're never going to be able to do this yourself. And what you'll find at many of these organizations is your best sales rep is already doing this. They're often coming up with messaging on the fly. They know they're doing it because they want to win a deal. They don't understand that they're doing product marketing work. They'll tweak messaging on the fly. They'll build personalized decks based on who's on the call. And so, my first step coming back into Loop after a 3-year hiatus was going and talking to the best sales reps. And I'm like, hey, what's working? Show me your best materials, because that's where it's actually happening in real time. And so I say all that to say there's usually the best salesperson, the best support person, the best onboarding person. They're all doing it. And so I often go to them first. And then if you can activate them, because you mentioned like you need, a bit of a reputation, or who are you to come in and tell a sales team of 50 what to do when you've been here for a week? You go find this person, one, because they give you great insight because they're already doing your job, so to speak. But number two is you just push it through them and they become the champion of this change. And you say like, hey, well, look at the best sales rep and what they're doing. Like, don't you want to be like them? Of course, they're all like stalking them because they hit their quota and I don't. So you work through your people. And honestly, that's like a really important hack for any demand strategy. If you're thinking like, I want to push a message out to the market of an infinite number of people, you're pushing, book a demo or whatever it is that the message you're trying to pushing it through people is like the big unlock, both for a product marketing team and a small stage startup. It's how do you get someone else's to say your message for you?
Yeah. So then I guess that kind of, I feel like leans into the next section, which is around like a lot of what I'm hearing out there in the market is marketers as a whole, but specifically product marketers, struggle to show the impact they have to the business in bringing in leads, closing business, right? And so typically it's creating enablement, case studies, and one-pagers and all these things. So if you're talking about working through the top salesperson, the top onboarding, top customer success, like how do you then show your impact in like working with them through the messaging? Because like you said, they're tweaking the messaging on the fly. So what does that look like from a practical standpoint of like, hey, CMO, hey, founder, this is how product marketing has been impacting business, top of funnel and as well as bottom of funnel?
I mean, like, if there were to be one place, so let's say if, someone listening or is looking for a very clear way to measure my impact because I'm scared I'm going to lose my job in the next 90 days. So I have to do something right now that moves the needle as a product marketer, as a marketer. Typically with a product marketer, it's the website and its conversion. And because the website is a distillation of your entire narrative, both, past, present, future of this company, this market, and our place in it. And so often if that story isn't resonating well, you can go put your news story on the website and immediately uptick demos if you do your job well. So there's your quick hacky win. It's like, let's just update the website, get leadership to look at this and say, I'm going to push out my new narrative here, narrative that I got feedback from our best sales and support people. And I'm going to take my learnings, put it on the website, increase conversion, and boom, aren't I valuable? There's your easy way to string together a story that gets leadership to see you as driving a measurable metric. Once you've done that, then you're back to this square one. So you only can do that once. Go do it. That's an easy one. Then you're left with, okay, well, what's my ongoing value to the organization? What I share is that the only metrics a product marketing team can actually meaningfully control is the NPS of their stakeholders. So all I can really control is NPS of the sales team. NPS as measured by product marketing is critical for me to do my job. I would be wildly more ineffective if they were not here to support me, and insert all variations of that type of questionnaire. That's really all you can control, because ultimately I make the deck, or I help you with the deck and I help you with the pitch, but you have to go like ready action and close the deal live on a call, and I can't really control it. So the only KPI you can actually control is NPS of your stakeholders. And what I typically, and what I'm doing at Loop is to say like, well, hey, we need to, do X, Y, or Z, move some needle inside of merchant success with existing merchants. And in order to do that, I'm going to need to take resources away from sales just a little bit. But here's what you can expect. My NPS scores at the end of this quarter coming from sales will drop from an 8 to a 6. And whether that's exact or not, it just helps set expectations to say, here's where I'm spending my time. Sales is going to be a 6. Merchant success is going to be a 9. And my goal is to make it a 10. And if merchant success is a 10 and sales is a 5, are you aligned with that? And they say, oh yeah, that sounds great. And then that leads into like the leading in. So that's your narrative, your backdrop narrative for measurement. And then that gives you your leading indicators. Okay, well, I am going to build 5 new decks for all of the key steps in the journey for the merchant success team.
Yeah.
And do you see how that ladders up to them giving me a 10? And if they give me a 10, then we can prevent, we can do more expansion, et cetera.
Got you.
So that's how I like to structure the story.
That's good. So from your perspective then, like, where do you feel like is one of like the 1 to 2 main challenges product marketers have helping build the GTM playbook? You have obviously done it at Loop, from sales to product marketing, and then you became a founder yourself, and now you're back at Loop as director of product marketing. So I'm curious, like from your perspective, where do you feel like product marketing is looking for, not necessarily looking, but where do you feel like product marketing is struggling the most to help their company grow?
Depends on the person and the environment of the team. Fundamentally, product marketing is in the stakeholder management business, which means we need to work through everyone else and support everyone else. And so, there's sales support, onboarding, engineering, product, et cetera. The biggest challenge is always going to be that, like full stop. And if you can't solve that and you're trying to do anything else, you're going to waste your time. You need to solve that first. You need to build good rapport with your leaders in each of the departments so that you can have a channel, right? Because what you're trying to do, and this is just like any demand strategy, you're trying to create a channel. And you often find like, oh, I've got this great message. So let's speak not about product marketing for a second, but just anyone who's trying to drive demand for a B2B software. It's like, this great message. It's like, cool, where do we put it? In the newsletter, on LinkedIn, and that's it. So it's like, you have to spend the time creating channels that you own, that you can push content to, and that can come back to you. And if you're stuck to say, well, all I've got is LinkedIn, organic social, you're not going to drive that much demand. And if you're a product marketer saying, well, all I've got is this one sales rep who likes me, you're not going to get that much done inside that organization.
Yeah.
So stakeholder management as creating channels for you to push messaging through is the number one challenge to solve. And only once you solve that, can you then get to the next, challenge and other hosts of challenges, which I typically propose as messaging that works and just trying to actually say something that moves the needle. But yeah, stakeholder management is the biggest challenge, creating channels for your messages internally.
Yeah. Oh, that's good, because it makes me wonder, like, do marketers just have a misalignment on expectation of what they think the job is and what you just said, which is like stakeholder management? Like, so much of the narrative is like, I feel like I have to constantly fight for showing my value in this role, and just marketing as a whole. As like, what is marketing doing for the company and driving business? And I think you just maybe hit on something that's pretty insightful, which is like the role of a marketer is stakeholder management and communicating the value of how to disseminate and share the message and the value of the product through those channels, to create channels. I've never really thought about it that way.
That's the big blocker. Anyway, go ahead.
No, well, it makes me think about like, so you left Loop, you create a status with a strong team. And like you had a bet, like you knew there was something that was missing in the market, signed in shopping. For you, as you think about what the role of marketing played for status, how did you guys identify what the top key levers were to growth for the building of status in the customer base that you had?
Well, I mean, we started with no reputation, hardly any product. So we hardly had a product. We had no real known brand in market, right? So we started from zero. And so like marketing was pretty much everything. Now, when you're a small company, it looks a lot different, but we knew we had to get the word out there. And so like, the elementary school version of what marketing is, like we just got to tell people about this. And how do we do that? And I think like the one thing I'm most confident in that we adopted as sort of like a mission or like a guiding North Star of marketing certainly at a company our stage, but I would argue it scales infinitely to companies of any size. The North Star that we adopted was word of mouth. Like we must crack word of mouth. There's many things we can do. There's one thing we need to do to scale efficiently, and that's get people talking about status when we are not the ones out there saying the pitch. I think this was around the time like Nicola or Nikita, I can't remember his name, but there's a guy on Twitter who's bought and sold, or created and sold like 3 startups to Facebook back to back to back or something like that. But anyway, he's got this narrative about this term called the K factor. And we don't actually use that metric, but it was a great concept to say like K factor represents of each new install to your consumer app, how many people will they tell about it and get to install the app. And there's a certain point, just like in, population collapse, right? There's a certain point with the K factor where if it's like 1 or 2, your app's going to die. It's not going to make it. And so, the consumer app space uses K factor to talk about virality, but all it is word of mouth. And when you put the K factor just as a concept inside of everything you do, especially as a small scale marketing team, it helps you prioritize the right things. When you're thinking of a call to action, or when you're thinking of a story, or you're thinking of like, hey, I have 5 hours to devote to meetings this week. Where should I spend them? Well, let's spend them in the places that are most likely to increase our K factor, right? Like get them to share the story. So in practice, how would this work? So like maybe you have time on your calendar as a marketer where you're like, I could write a LinkedIn post. In theory, that could have like a massive K factor because 100 people could see it and download, but we've all written LinkedIn posts before. You post them and nothing happens. So it's like I could write a LinkedIn post, or I could take the same LinkedIn post, the same message that I was going to put into it, and go to one of my partners, because a partner I know works with 20 brands. And when we think about, well, what would lead that partner to tell the 20 brands? It's not your typical sales pitch, and it's not your case studies, and it's not, have you heard about us? And here's our history. What gets somebody to tell a brand or a partner in their network is often something that excites them, inspires them, where they're just like put on their heels and like, you before we hang up, I've got to tell you about this because it's crazy. I heard about this today and I never heard about it before. Like those are the types of messages that get your K factor up, that get people to share your story. It's new, it's fresh, it's exciting. It made me think of things in a new way. So to bring this all the way back to status, we really spent a lot of time thinking about what that message was. How do we excite a partner so that they tell 20 of their brands about status? And what we landed on, that I would say in 3 years of message testing, was the most effective way of increasing our K factor with partners, was we would kick off every demo and every conversation with a partner with a question. When you're getting into like, who is status and what do you guys do? It wasn't a deck, and we came from Loop, and we've been in the Shopify ecosystem for the last 20 years. None of that matters. When we would start every pitch with a new partner, we would say, well, hey, to think about where we're going, I just want to ask you this question. How would you build a website if 100% of visitors were signed in? And I'd say literally answer like, well, how would you build a website? And they're like, oh, okay, that'd be crazy. I'd do like men's and women's landing pages and navigation sorted by products that you're most interested in and collection pages sorted by what's in stock and your size. And I'd just be like, exactly. That's where we're headed, right? So like that, and that gets people so excited because then they take that question back to their internal teams. So anyway, the question became the message, and the strategy for us with that question was K factor, virality. Like, how do you just get people talking? Long answer, hope it made sense, but that's how we really cracked it early days at Saddle.
Yeah. Oh, that's so good, man. And I think what you're speaking to, for me, what resonates in that is your ability to draw people in. And with a question, it created curiosity. And the curiosity, I would say, comes from you being able to truly understand the partner's business, their business model, right? Working at an agency, mostly working on design and development for the websites on Shopify, that's their bread and butter. So for you to come up with a question
Yeah.
to hook them in, and what that makes me think about is I feel like within positioning, which is a highly demanded thing for within marketing and product marketing specifically, I wonder like how much product marketers struggle with positioning because they don't understand the market and the partner ecosystem of like what's kind of like the main focus for the partner, what's the main focus for the industry. I'm curious like what your thoughts are on that. Like when you look at marketers, because I know you guys are in the process right now of hiring a senior partner marketing manager.
Shout out.
Yeah. Like,
Two of them actually come
oh,
join us.
okay, two. And maybe I'm leading the witness here, but tell me if I'm right or tell me if there's gaps in this. I think there's a demand for positioning because in B2B SaaS, product is no longer the differentiator. With AI now, everything can be captured and copied within less than 6 months. And I think Loop is proof of that. And that's what's interesting that I want to get into later about like how you're repositioning Loop. But now everyone can copy each other. So really it's about the positioning and messaging. And in order for you to have a differentiated position in messaging, you have to understand the ecosystem of partners and the
Yeah.
market as a whole on a macro level. But I feel like maybe marketers struggle to have that knowledge and doing the discipline and researching and understanding the market, understanding the partners. So therefore they lack the ability to come up with strategic positioning. Is there anything in there that is true or am I way off base?
Yeah, I mean, there's not, as evidenced by the all-in-one platforms of that there are dozens of them, right? We are an all-in-one platform. We are a post-purchase platform, an all-in-one, and we're just like Loop but cheaper. Like there's the essence of positioning of the post-purchase ecosystem on Shopify right now. We're the all-in-one post-purchase platform, and we're just like Loop but cheaper. And which, just like Loop but cheaper, the sentiment of that is good. Like that starts to become better positioning because you're at least saying what we're not, or pointing to something similar and saying we're like that but different in these ways. And I think people do struggle with that. They, especially with AI, the problem with it is like AI enabled or AI powered or powered by AI or AI. Like you think you're positioning, but you're actually not. You're doing like the opposite of positioning. You're actually just like going into the mob of businesses and being undifferentiatable from any of them because it's like, well, what do? You do something in e-commerce with AI. Well, so does everyone else. And some people do it with chat and reviews. So that's actually the funny part about these waves of tech. With AI, that's the most recent one, but the one before was Web3. Everyone's gonna be like Web3 for e-com. So, you do struggle with positioning because you have these trends that you feel like you need to jump onto. And so that's like the big temptation of a marketer is like, well, it's hot, aka it's viral, aka we should like piggyback on this. There's a moment that happened at the Super Bowl, so I should tweet about it because it's relevant and it's in the zeitgeist, so to speak. But with positioning, that's going to lead you down all the wrong paths. Really like thinking about what moves the needle in a very short message is to say, unlike X, which does Y, we do Z. And like what that enables the reader, the listener to do is to like fill up a definition of you with a mental model of something else that they already understand. And you didn't have to tell me any of it. Because if I did, I'd be reading a 500-word blog post, and who reads those? They're all written by ChatGPT anyways. And so I often share like I'll just say two examples here because they're recent. One is Klaviyo's rebrand to B2B CRM. And B2C CRM, very critical distinction there. B2C CRM. What I love about that positioning is that one, what it does, going back to our first point of like moving a message through people, B2C CRM enables millions of investors all around the world to now speak on their behalf and help pump up their market value by giving them a new story. And the new story is don't think of us like Attentive. Think of us like HubSpot. And so now you just have all these investors to say, whoa, well, Attentive is never going to be that big, but look how big HubSpot is. And Klaviyo is not looking there, they're looking there. And so that was like a positioning effort that gets all these investors to say, oh my gosh, I'm thinking of Klaviyo all wrong. And now I know what they're thinking, and they're going to be a much bigger company than I could have ever imagined. Great way of positioning. And then the other one I use, which is like a kind of a silly one and kind of got played out during the VC craze of the tech boom of the last 10 years, I guess. But it's like, we're like Uber for blank. Played out, don't actually use it, but the spirit that lives inside of that is what you should be trying to get from positioning. It's like, we are like the Uber for insert industry. It's a very simple phrase that enables the listener to then fill it up with all of these ideas of what and who you are. And so you need to be looking for things like that to effectively position. And that's why I go back to the Loop example. We're like Loop, but cheaper. Very effective. Now, not a long-term strategy, but it is an effective way of positioning. And the more you look for patterns like that in your messaging, you'll be much more successful.
Yeah. How'd you pick that up? Was that more of like just getting reps on the ground for the past like 8 years, or were there certain people you look to, or were there certain books that you read on positioning messaging? Like, because there's so much value in what you just shared. As you speak to the ability to carry a message through people, you have to leverage the frameworks that are already in their mind and then guide them along the way, right? That allows for that virality to happen that word of mouth to happen that much more easily versus like having to retrain them on a completely different category, right? So where did you learn some of those things?
I mean, on the fly at Loop my first time around. I've never been, I mean, I've read a bunch of business books, but the problem with every factoid that I got from a business book is the first time I implemented it wrong, and then I just had to learn on the fly anyway. So I just kind of like got sick of business books. I was like, oh no, I read this. I know what to do now. And then I tried it and I was like, that was a colossal failure. What do I do now? Well, invent something new to try, and then it works. And that happened like 10 times in a row at Status. So I don't have like a ton of, read this book. It's a must read, although I'm sure there are plenty out there. But I think what I had the benefit early days at Loop of being the salesperson and the onboarding person. And so what that meant was I was talking to prospective customers and just recently signed customers every single day. And if you ever are given that opportunity and you want to extract as much value from it as possible, my path was I was like an extreme diva about every pitch. Like I was like, I treated every performance as like, I needed every detail to be perfect. That goes to like sound and lighting and the room I was in. And if an engineer was walking by and the app didn't work, or, in there, like, I was like, how could you do that to me? Like, I just look like an idiot in this moment. But the point is like, I took every call so seriously, and I was doing message testing every time. It was just like, I'm going to tweak this. And, I had my script down that I could recite it. I could, my status script, same thing. I could recite the whole thing, start to finish. But what I was doing in these calls is I have my memorized script, but in these calls, I was often rearranging the order of them in real time. Like I normally start here. Here's a good example. Loop. We had the best feature ever. Shop now. It's now a commodity. Everyone has it. But back in the day, it was like the best thing. And one of the tests I was doing live on these calls was I would lead with it because it's the best, right? So your instinct is to lead with it. It's just like, look at this. Here it is. Like, let's just not waste anybody's time. Like, look how awesome this is. And I'm going to win you in the first 5 minutes in the call. But then I would start experimenting with doing it last. And what I found was, at least in that example, doing it last meant that I likely already won the deal before you even see the best thing. And so it's just, I won the deal without our best feature, and then our best feature was last, and I hit you with it last. And at that point, they were just like overwhelmed with value. And they were just like, oh my God, it continues, But I think that type of practice is really important to master messaging. And so if you have the opportunity to be on calls, take them. And when you take them, really obsess over what you're saying.
That's so good. And I remember too, when I was working with you at Loop, like one of the first things you told me is like, if I only had like 2 minutes to talk about Loop, I'm just showing them that one slide, which was just the Shop Now exchange capability. And for those that know what Shop Now is, go to loopreturns.com and you can get a little glimpse of that. But that being said, like what was the...
Your plugs are great, dude. You nail them. Now hiring.
Trying to do that word of mouth, what was that insight? What was that? Because I think naturally, yeah, like you want to get right to the meat and potatoes, especially now you look at the way people are consuming media with TikTok, with YouTube Shorts, like everything, lead with the biggest bang first to draw people in. Like when you start a story, lead with the person getting chased by the bear, right? To like lean people in to be like, okay, what's going on here, right? Drop them in the action. And I feel like that mindset would be very similar to, let's just start with the first biggest ace in the hole, which is our Shop Now experience. So what was it about you having that insight to say, hey, no, I'm going to leave that last?
I mean, at the core of it was a very simple framework that I'm sure, or a phrase that I'm sure came out of business books, but it's like under promise and over deliver, right? So at the core of it is that, like your pitch is that, and you want to get to the point where you are officially over delivering. And saving the best for last, you're doing that. It's like this person's getting so excited and they haven't even seen your best stuff yet. So by the time they see it, they're going to be so thrilled. So it's fundamentally under promise and over deliver. And that is what people get wrong when they try to drop people into the action and lead with their best first, is that then they set the excitement level so high, and then they get into the funnel and it just gets worse from there. Because I already saw your best stuff. And so you're actually over-promising and under-delivering over time. If you follow like the energy meter of your audience, you lead with the best, boom, and then over time, by the time you insert your CTA at the very end, their energy level is so much. So there's like the way I think about it, those two things competing. In this environment, like social media and getting people's attention and stuff, like you just need two. You need like two awesome things, because your first, you probably should have something attention grabbing. And admittedly, that was my question. My question served as the attention grabbing thing to bring people into my world. How would you build a website if 100% of visitors were signed in? That was like, whoa, okay, now I'm in a completely different mindset than I was. So that was the first one. And then the second was some feature down the pipeline that was like really cool. And it was one-click login via transactional emails. It was amazing. That part doesn't matter. But you do almost need to be thinking too. But honestly, but like if I were gonna speak about like maybe with this, just like a little more swagger or kind of like a chip on my shoulder at this point, it's just like I want you to believe that I always have one more thing up my sleeve. Like you still haven't seen my best stuff. And I think like that's more of like my attitude as a person, but also with like messaging. It's like you want people to be like buying in to you more, moving through the funnel, buying into your story just a little bit more. And one of the main draws of that is like there's every time I've moved a step forward in this funnel, I was more pleasantly surprised than I was at the previous step of the funnel. So I've got to get to the end, because what's waiting for me there?
Mm.
That's how I think of like narrative design, you know, is you want it because you need these like psychological hooks to get people that like hook people, but then they take the walk themselves.
Yeah.
Always having one more ace up your sleeve is a very motivating way
Yeah.
of telling a story.
Yeah. I mean, you're essentially telling marketers that we need to become Christopher Nolans and just like become directors of like creating stories.
A little bit. I
Yeah.
mean, like, yeah. I mean, definitely try for sure. Like, and that's when like the sales call is a performance. I get into a call and it's like I am live, like I'm on a stage for 150 people. But I think the more you think of it like a story and a narrative and a play, and that you're an actor, you will become a diva,
Yeah.
like I was, and you will become a better marketer
Yeah.
for sure.
That's good. Okay. So let's get into that for a little bit with the remaining time we got here. Like, what is so interesting about you now at Loop is it's not a category that you have to educate the consumer on, the market on. Like, it's not a 0 to 1. I don't know
Yeah.
what you would call it, because you're coming for your It's like Jordan coming back from retirement. And what I say by that is like you're 45 going back to 23 to show like, hey, I still have it. And not specifically you, but I would say Loop, right? Like Loop, the narrative right now is, hey, we're like Loop, but cheaper. So how do you think about the repositioning in a market where everyone's kind of copying you now? Maybe is beating you, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe there's some competitors out there that are kind of growing ahead of you because that messaging is working. Like, how do you train the market? Because you first said go to the market to change the market if you can. If you can't change the market, then you go to the product and you tweak the product. So like, where is Loop at now with that strategy? If you can share any insights or to help people practically who are trying to necessarily not go from 0 to 1, but they're in this market where there's a sea of competitors, and it's like, well, how do I stand out now? Because everyone's got the same features.
Yeah. Maybe just to quell any concerns immediately about Loop and competition, because it is a highly competitive market now. But as a sign of success, looking at like the top performers on Shopify, the Shopify Plus brands, Loop has 10 times more of the enterprise brands on Shopify than any other competitor in market. So still doing very well, but it's just not pure play domination like it used to be, which was fun. But leads to why I came back. I mean, and kind of how I'm thinking about this era of Loop. This is a highly competitive market. It's just pure competition. To sum it down in a single word, it's just pure competition. And that motivates me to my core. Someone who, you know, loves sports and blah, blah, blah. But I just love competing. I love the thrill of being on the field with other people and winning. And so now what I saw was this dynamic where you have this product that was the best and likely is the best still, by the way. But when you're looking at like, well, is it by number of features, or is there one clear winner of a feature anymore? No. And so now the devil goes into the details. It's like the minutia of like how things get done. And, you know, if I was going to give away one, I don't even want to do this, but if I was going to give away one thing that I see that's exciting to bring me back in an early developing market, or if you're creating a market like we did with Status, you often gain market share and win just by having the new thing. And you're seeing this play out with models. Like a model these AI models, well, mine does one more thing. Mine does video now. Mine does audio now. And so it's just like you do a thing and then the market moves to you because you're just doing the new thing. But eventually, like all markets, they become more mature and they all sort of offer the same thing. And what's happening now in this space is proving who performs the best. And so that's where you're finding a lot of the market on their heels right now is they're all saying, well, we have the same amount of features that Loop has, but for cheaper. And I just love that you've got 10, 15 competitors all just looking over there. And it's like, well, cool. We've been doing it for 7 years. You've tried to copy ours for the last 18 months. And wait till I show the case studies of performance of how our same feature title as yours dramatically outperforms you. And so that's kind of what motivates me is I see a very clear path. When you're in a commoditized market, you just have to show who performs best, not who has the most.
Yeah.
And we can, and it's all sitting right there. It just needs to be brought to market. Our competitors are kind of, I don't know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm back. I'm very excited for that competition. Excites me.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then let me throw a little of a curveball at you with this, and because having worked at Loop and having seen us close deals just through email, which was crazy. Now, like you have to fight to show the proof in the value. Why am I paying this much for returns when it's a cost center, right? And there's the education of it's a profit generating aspect of the business. And so if you have all these competitors that are doing it cheaper, I think it comes down to the brass tacks of like, in this market, I just don't have the budget. Like I see the value in Loop, the user experience better. You guys have been in the industry longer. I just can't. I think there's an element, and this is what I'm trying to get at. Having worked at Loop, for you to see the proof of like, hey, Loop's going to be better, sometimes the customer, the merchant, has to actually go through the pain of choosing the other solution first and realizing like,
Totally.
wow, like the onboarding experience was horrible. They said they can do all these things and they couldn't do it. Now I want to go back to Loop. Like I remember that very vividly. I was like, okay, this is a deal that is I'm closing loss now, but in 6 months they're going to come back. Like, so how do you, because you've built the pricing and packaging of Loop from day one back in the day. So like, how do you take that approach, what you're doing now? How do you think about pricing with that mindset? Because this is a very cutthroat market right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, I will say that like while I was at Status and had left Loop, never thought I'd come back to Loop, but always watched the space just because I knew it well. There were some very innovative pricing models that came out, particularly passing costs onto the consumer and enabling the merchant to have free shipping and software. So like, honestly, genius, very good. Unfortunately tied to like insurance and protection, which as a category, not great. But I do think that there's legs to something like that. It's just very early days of pricing a consumer paid strategy. And it's very quickly going to turn into like, well, what benefits does a customer get from paying something in the cart for benefits, right? Because that's fundamentally what's happening. It's like free shipping protection or free returns or whatever. You're paying for a benefit. And what hasn't yet come to a head is which provider of benefits gets that revenue. So for example, memberships and free returns in the cart, like that hasn't clashed yet. But when, if I'm paying $7 for exclusive benefits to a brand, one of them's free shipping, one of them is $15 in store credit on my next purchase, I'm probably signing up more for that, for like the free $15. And so in that environment, who gets the money? The returns provider, one of our competitors, who's been taking all of that money to themselves and is actually 3 times more expensive than Loop on paper, actually, even though on paper it seems like they're free. You're actually paying 3 times more because they're taking all that revenue. But my point being is that pricing model, very innovative in its infancy on how this is going to play out over time. Shopify has signaled that they don't like it. Memberships hasn't even come in to try to take it, but I think they will. Rewards in the same boat. They're offering a benefit to the customer. So you're going to have this collision of people providing benefits, trying to get that, $1.50, $5 upsell in the cart. So that's how I think about pricing. I mean, like really innovative strategies have come out. It is not my place at this point and not something that I'm trying to solve by rebuilding that pricing model, but I'm really watching that closely. And I do like it. I like the sentiment of it.
That's good. Well, dude, I appreciate you coming on. I think you guys, I can't remember exactly when you guys are going to be doing the drop, but you got like 60 features coming out with Loop. And so I think for somebody who's looking at how to build their go-to-market playbook, I think taking a look at what you guys are doing with the launch and the announcement of that is a perfect example to go take some notes on and use for like their swipe file. So is there anything that you can kind of share with us of like what's next for Loop? Where can people follow you and want to like connect with you, whether that's LinkedIn, Twitter, or whatever?
Yeah, I think what's next for Loop, and that has me personally excited, is this reimagining of what this product can do. And for example, everyone thinks returns when you think of Loop, which is great. And then maybe if you're like ambitious and look to the future, you see post-purchase and you're like, okay, well, there's going to be a post-purchase suite. But what's really exciting about how Loop is thinking about things is more of like a full circle story. Post-purchase is only half of the narrative and only half of what this product can do if you think about the data that we have available to us. And so the future of Loop's exciting because it's moving more pre-purchase. And it's not to say we're doing rewards or subscriptions or anything that's happening in the pre-purchase product suite. But when you think of, like, let's use an example that you know very well, but like Fit, right? It's like we're the only people sitting on a whole host of data of why things are returned for being too big or too small. And imagine a world where that data is moving on to the product page pre-purchase to help drive confidence and conversion. More and more of that you will be seeing of us leveraging our unique data set to drive conversions pre-purchase in a way that only we can. And so I'm very excited for that. And then find me on LinkedIn, Joe Vancena. The spelling's probably in the description here somewhere or on my screen. Find me on LinkedIn. I love LinkedIn. I love DMing. I love comments. And yeah, find me there.
Awesome. So super pumped for you guys. Like Loop will always have my heart. Plus, all my stock I exercise. So I'm waiting for you guys to do some big things. But no, man, so cool for you to join, and everyone go take a look at Loop's upcoming release of all the features and find Joe. So until then, everyone, catch you next time. Thanks, Joe.